No.
It's not automatic. It's not. Oh, are we on? Are we on? All right. Hey, all right. Super professional. Ready? All right. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Spilling Ink. All right, let's try this again. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Spilling Ink, the show that takes you behind the book to meet the authors and professionals in the publishing industry. And yes, we also meet Jason too, the unstoppable Jaysaurus. We're going to talk about that name in a second. But before we get started, we have to remember our sponsor. So let's take a moment to give a shout out to Creative Edge Publicity. They are our sponsor. Cheers. Who provides us the wonderful opportunity to be able to stream to both Facebook and YouTube live at the same time. Yay! So Creative Edge, they are your brand, your future. They are advocates of collaboration and believers in partnership in the ever-changing literary industry. Check our notes for the show below at the end of the show, and we will provide you with the links to them. All right, now back to Jaysaurus.
That was so professional. Where did that come from?
You know, I've been on in the green room for what? What, Stacey? We've been here for like a half an hour. I never even looked at his tag. I was too busy showing everybody the mountains of New Hampshire behind me.
Well, you know, and let's face it, if we would have seen it ahead of time, then we wouldn't have, and it wouldn't have been nearly so enjoyable now.
Right. Why?
Why?
What I don't know. But I'm shocked that nobody has noticed that I've got a new camera angle and new earbuds. Where am I pointing? Look at, I got rid of the corded one so Leah would stop yanking them out of my ears. So nobody commented on them.
That means you have to
right? Jessica West, amazing editor and good friend. Jess, I just wanted to tell you that I absolutely love your hair. It is just gorgeous in that picture. Looks awesome. Hi, Julia. Man, we've got so many good friends here. This is great. Friends. Hello, friends. And we have, so Stacey is not new to me, but she's new to this live thing that we're doing with Spilling Ink. And Stacey, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, since every time I say your last name, I pronounce it differently. And every time somehow it's wrong. It's like a USB.
It's part of the draw, right? Is it
Filak?
Filak. Like
Filak. Like lilac. I like it. Stacey Filak, who is an extraordinary fantasy author. And I know I say extraordinary and fabulous and stuff like that a lot, but I really, really mean it. I read her book and absolutely fell in love with it. Stacey, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you for having me and for saying all those nice things.
You freaking deserve it. The Queen Underneath was just incredible. It really was. And we have all amazing fantasy authors here, and then me, who I don't really write fantasy, so I'll be like the moderator and let you guys fight it out.
Well, you write horror like me in some cases.
and it has some supernatural and paranormal, which seems like fantasy to me, but it's just not really the same.
It's all part of the same family of weirdness.
Yeah, that speculative fiction weirdness thing. Oh my gosh, Belinda Clemens. I don't know you personally, but you do need to read The Queen Underneath. You're right.
I highly recommend it.
Oh my God, it's so freaking good. It really is so good. And none of these two ladies don't listen to me when I recommend the books. And I have really good taste in books, damn it. Just because I like zombies and spiders doesn't mean I have bad taste in books, okay?
There are no zombies or spiders in The Queen Underneath.
Oh, that's good. That's
bonus.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So tell me a little bit about okay.
Maybe I didn't tell the truth, but really there.
Give us the book pitch, Stacey.
Okay. So The Queen Underneath is a dark retelling of Sleeping Beauty, which takes place in a city that is divided in two. The nobles and the sort of, legitimate members of society rule the above, and the thieves and sex workers and assassins and everybody else rule the under.
Okay.
And one day, the rulers of both are assassinated, and their young heir apparents must come together to figure out what happened and to save their city. And hijinks and magical mayhem ensue.
I love the word hijinks.
Hijinks is such a good word. It really is. It is. I will tell you that from your description, and I hope you don't take offense to this, but from your description, and when you first told me about the book, it sounded like young adult to me.
I know.
It's really not young adult. I mean, I would have read it as a teenager, but it's really adult fiction, right?
So,
or what do you think?
So here's the party line, which is I wrote it as adult fiction, but it's sold to a young adult publisher. So it was published as upper YA, as in the age recommendation on the back says 14 to 17 and up, something like that. I think it's 17 and up, which is really adult, right? But,
right. It's almost like new adult than rather than young adult.
I mean, the characters are younger people, but they're encountering adult situations. It's not really what I would call a coming of age, which is what I think of when I think of young adults. But, you know, there is some element of that along with a lot of new adult sexy times.
Well, I remember a lot about this book, but one of my favorite memories is when she says, "It has to look like you really used it," and then she spit on it. And we won't go into it more than that.
Okay.
And
you know what I love about that scene, though?
I read that and I was like, what?
Yeah.
You know what I loved about that scene was that, and why I wrote that scene and why that scene was so dear to my heart was that I had never seen a woman that in control of a situation of that type, you know, and
She is my hero.
and Gemma was the only person in control in that situation. So, yeah, I blush every time somebody brings it up, but also it's one of my favorites.
Well, what I love, oh my God, I can't get into it because getting into it actually gives you a little bit of spoilers, and I don't want to give spoilers, but I think it's sexy for the reader a little bit, but it wasn't sexy for her at all. It was just business. She was getting shit done.
Right, exactly. She was 100% like, this is happening. This is not, I mean, this means, yeah, it was, I mean, I loved that because we've seen so many, if you take that scene and gender bend it and turn it around, we've seen situations like that so many times where the man is in control and the woman is made to feel somehow manipulated by the situation. And and she just has everything in control, and she knows how much it is freaking them out, and she loves it.
Well, no, so I do want to, man, I'm really risking sounding like I'm on task with this show by doing this, and I hate being on task, but
somebody's got to keep us.
I do want to explore this a little bit. Okay, so we say the upper is kind of the higher class, and the lower or the underneath is the lower class. Now, could you maybe explore a little bit the morality that's going on here, because and what maybe why that came to be the way it is?
Well, so historically, 150 years before the Queen Underneath takes place, there was a big war with a neighboring country who has still maintained magic. Our little city-state of Ygritte does not have magic. But the people of Vega who live next door, who have conquered huge swaths because, you know, magic, they have.
That's what Stacey said.
They have taken over everything except this little, they've left behind this little city state. And the only way that the little city state survived was by banding together the criminals and the nobles. The criminals had this, huge network of people who had been taking care of each other for years, who the nobles then brought in to help out, and they came to an agreement that the under would continue to do crime and take care of things, and they would pay taxes and help fortify the city state, and in doing so they were left alone. Their crime was sort of looked aside and whatever. But of course, the nobles are turning up their nose at the under, and they're too good to have anything to do with them. And we have a very patriarchal society above, but we have a matriarchal society underneath, and it's a very we look after each other and we take care of everybody. Everybody deserves to be taken care of. And so when this happens, there's the king of above, who's this 18-year-old wet behind the ears kind of pup, has no idea what's going on, and he gets led around fairly roughly by our queen underneath, who has been taking control of situations since she was like 13. So
Well, and I think that
sorry, Jason. Are you going to be writing other fairy tale retellings, or?
I think about it. I didn't start out for it to be actually a fairy tale retelling. And then once I had written, the first draft, there were elements of it that had that Sleeping Beauty sort of feel to it, but I ended up amping that up. It didn't start out as that. I've actually been contemplating. The Secret Garden was my favorite book when I was little. I must have read it 150,000 times. And I've been contemplating what a romance version of that would look like. So, something to think about.
Yeah.
Well, and your writing, at least with this book, had a really kind of a fun quality where the writing was really pretty, but it was also a little bit gritty. It was like dirty on purpose, and I thought that really added to the feel of the book, because it just felt like you were kind of in the underbelly, and I like that a lot. And what I really enjoyed was that we spend a lot of our time in this book in the under, and though these are criminals, these are sex workers, these are thieves and murderers. They're not good people. A lot of them have done terrible things, but it seems like the way they treat each other and the way they treat other people is almost better than the people in the upper. They're much more understanding, and there's a lot more camaraderie. And I thought that was a really kind of a cool element of the book there. So,
and the under has a code. I mean, you don't drag something out for no reason. If you're going to kill someone, you go there, you kill them, you do it. Torture is a thing that's used as a method of control, and they're not into that kind of, control. And so that's like a last resort kind of, treatment for somebody who's really, terrible. And things like rape and torture and, that sort of violation. Like if you are going, exactly, honor among thieves, exactly. So if you're going to go and take your revenge on somebody from under, you're going to kill them, you're going to be done with the job, and then you're going to move on. But that's not how the above does things, and so that has caused a huge amount of distrust. The under actually mistrusts the above much more than the above mistrusts the under, because they know what they're really like.
yeah. Well, the under, they're more straight shooters. You know what you know what to expect. I just want to pause here and say hello to some people. We've got Mike Feria and Regine just came on, Ariana and Belinda. Julia, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know you're super busy. So thank you everybody for coming on, and Anita and commenting. And I think Joe's around here too. I haven't seen a comment from him in a little bit, but thanks for coming in, guys. It's very, very good to see you. So yeah, so now that we've kind of drilled you on your book for a few minutes, thanks for letting me do that. I mean, I was just such a big fan. It's the kind of world that I could write fun fanfic in there, little short stories, because it was just such a cool
You can
place.
send those to me anytime. Anytime.
What, Jessica, I agree. You aren't doing something wrong or bad if they earned it, right?
Right.
But then you get into some ethical dilemmas. I mean, who decides if you've earned it or not?
Wrong. Right. Yeah.
That's the whole karma thing. You wish upon somebody the karma that they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
The meanest thing you can possibly say, because if they're just an asshole or, have done something bad, you hope they get it back. And that's it.
Yes.
You just let the karma take care of it.
Yep.
I hope you treat them the way you should be treated.
You notice I gave karma a female tag.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Well, there was a lot of venom in your female characters, Stacey, and I'm curious with you other two fantasy authors, do you put a lot of kind of venom and fire into your female characters?
Fire, yes. I don't know about venom per se.
I don't know. Well, venom might be the wrong word. I just mean kind of sharp and dangerous.
When they need to be. Some characters, yes, but not all.
Right.
No? Okay.
I think I think it just depends on where they've been and what they've been through, and
I mean, yeah, it depends on what I'm writing too. If I'm writing the fairy tale retellings, it's a little bit more of the edging away of innocence into that, because they're this, bright-eyed and whatever, and then the world falls down on them, or things come out and it's like, oh, okay.
I always like showing how characters grow through learning through their mistakes and their failures, and being able to show the failures is important. You can't have a perfect character. You have to have a character who might be strong in their convictions and falls flat on their face when they go after something because they didn't do it the right way, but they have to learn that first.
Yes, absolutely. I like the vigilante justice. Yeah, my FBI series had him going in that direction, but as an FBI agent, he couldn't.
Right.
He shouldn't. I should say he couldn't. He shouldn't. All those things, but he the fact that they want it, and they go down that dark path. It's like, how do you make them grow without stepping over lines?
Mm. Yeah, that's tough.
Do you feel like your female and male characters respond differently to the same types of situations, or not really?
It's situational. It's not male female. It's what they've experienced. They're going to base their reactions on what they know.
Right. People who have taken oaths to be, to jobs like doctors and cops and things like that, and judges and stuff, have to have those moments of doubt whether they're female or male.
And I've got a male character who he is overprotective to the point of being annoying because in the past he's lost someone. It has nothing to do with him being male and wanting to protect a female. He lost somebody because of a mistake he made. So now he's super overprotective because of that.
Yes.
Oh, what do you think, Stacey?
Oh, I think absolutely. And actually, I mean, not to keep digging up the queen underneath, but one of the things that I consciously did when I was writing it was I turned those tropes on their head. So when I needed a damsel in distress, that became the king. The king was the damsel in distress, and the tropey whore with a heart of gold is a male sex priest. And, so I purposefully did not play into gender roles by bending them all. I don't know whether it was successful or not, but it happened.
I like that, the conscious subversion of expectations, not to pound a message into somebody's head, but to give somebody a different perspective.
Yeah. And for me, it was just an interesting experiment in what would happen and what would the world look like if things were reversed. And it was, I mean, I had fun writing it and turned into a pretty book. So.
Mhm.
Sounds really interesting. So how long did it take you to write that book?
Oh, I think all total, it took me about 6 months to write and get it ready for my agent. And then I took us about a little over a year to sell it after she had it. So
that's the agonizing part. We talk a lot to independent authors who are in control of when their books come out. But on the traditional side, there's this huge waiting gap. What do you do to fill the time?
Sweat and pace. I mean, sure, there's a period of time where you just think, this is the only thing I can think about, and it does get, I feel like that was my first book. So it wasn't the first book I'd written, but it was the first book that had a chance to be sold. And so I think that that one, I spent a lot more time focused on it's on submission, and I can't do anything else except think about the fact that it's on submission. And once it's sold, then I could start to think about other things. And so, I mean, it's been out for 2 years. It was with the publisher for about a year. So in 3 years, I've written, a couple more books, which are now out on submission. So now, luckily I have a day job. So, I have plenty of things to keep me busy.
Now, how is the submission process after you've published a book?
For me, it's been the same because I only had a 1-book contract. I do have friends who have gotten multiple book contracts. And so that's, that's a whole nother different set of pressures. I mean, I have my agent now and she's awesome. And she, does her thing and she keeps me in the loop about what's happening and who's interested and who's reading it and that kind of thing. But I sometimes look at my friends who have multi-book deals and I think that they are probably more stressed than I am because they know they have to get it done and it has to be acceptable to this editor. You don't have this giant pool of editors that can look at it. It has to be good for this editor. So,
hey, nothing motivates like a deadline.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. My next deadline now is not until September. So I had it in June, but I moved it to September because with the scroll brain, it just hasn't worked the past couple of months. So
I can't imagine being on deadline in a pandemic. Like I can't even fathom how that would work.
Well, a pandemic and moving.
Right, exactly. You've got nothing going on.
Yeah.
There's no time to organize your thoughts at all.
I haven't had time to organize my moving. So I think until that happens, I'm still going to be scrolly until June 19th. So
I get that. I totally get that.
That'll give me 3 months to write the book, basically.
You can do it. 3 months, nothing.
Well, especially if you've got your synopsis already, you're halfway there.
Well, this one I have like 15,000 words already. So.
Oh, hey.
Yeah. I read a little bit before all this happens.
Mike Ferrier has a good question here, and I'm assuming you're talking about having 1 book published already. Does it give you 1 foot in the door? Hopefully you don't have to go all the way back to the beginning and start over.
Well, so certainly I would have 1 foot in the door were I to write a sequel to The Queen Underneath. I certainly, my publisher would have, first rights to that, and etc. It's not that I don't envision ever writing a sequel to it. I could. I know what happens to the characters next. I'm just not sure. I want to yet. I'm not there yet where I want to write it. I had a lot of other things floating around in my head that needed to take flight first. So I have a middle grade fantasy that's out on submission right now. I have rewritten probably 8 times the first book that I ever wrote, which is at least part of a trilogy. And there are doable versions of that book that exist in 3 or 4 different iterations. So one of these days I'll get it where I want it and it will be ready to go out. And then, I have a couple of other things that I've been working on. So certainly if I were to stick with that world and that particular story, I would have a foot in the door, but I'm just scatterbrained and like to work on all different things.
Speaking of like the one foot in the door idea, I mean, when you start off brand new, you're querying agents just to get them to look at it. So now that you have an agent, you're not having to query out anymore. Your agent just takes it and looks at it. So it's
so
one step shorter in the process then.
Absolutely. Okay. So whenever I start anything new, I'll usually, once I get 10, 15,000 words in, I'll send her a little bit and say, okay, what do you think about this? Am I even starting, is this even worth pursuing? Is there anything that you see immediately that is, too much like something else that you've read? I mean, she reads, I don't know how she reads as much as she does because she's reading, her writer's work plus, knowing what's going on in the market. But, she definitely has a wider reading range than I do. So sometimes she'll come back and she'll go, well, it feels a little bit like this, so then, maybe, slide away from that, or maybe, lean into this part because this is really popular right now. So then I'll, she'll send it back to me and I'll get to work on it. And, but my agent is fantastic in that she always says, if it's not working for you, even if it's what's going to sell, if it's not working for you, you can't make it happen. So, so yeah, I it's like having somebody in your back pocket that's helping you edit as you go, which is fantastic.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question.
Go ahead, Jason.
Go ahead, Jane. Go ahead.
Oh, all right. Have you ever had feedback from your agent that's made you put something aside?
So I haven't set it aside completely, but I did have feedback on something that I had started that she was like, okay, I like this aspect of it and I like this aspect of it, but A, B, C, D, and E, I hate. Okay. And she was right. I mean, the reasons why she gave me, she was absolutely right. And what's also awesome about her is she'll say, okay, I'm giving you these 3 books to read for homework. And then you can see why I'm saying what I said. And so I'll read those books and I'll go, okay. Yep. And so I've set it aside while I do my homework, but but then, when I go back at it, I'm definitely more in tune with what's going to work, for the wider market. So.
Okay.
Interesting. I like that. What are I don't know. Do you read a lot of fantasy, or what are your tastes in reading?
So I love fantasy. I love science fiction. I have found in recent months that I can't live in a fantasy world. I can't get there. I think because the real world is too
bizarre,
ever present and demanding right now. So I haven't, the last couple of months, I haven't been able to read actually any fiction. I've been reading, lately I've been reading Rachel Maddow's book on the gas and oil industry, which you would think is super boring, but it's actually pretty good for political world building. But it's at least I'm able to stay in the world because it's the real world. I was finding that when I was trying to read fantasy in 2020, I was bailing out of a lot of worlds because I couldn't get myself into them enough. So I'm hopeful that one of these days I will fall back in, but right now I've been reading a lot of nonfiction.
Okay. Well, when it seems like whenever we talk, I bring up The Queen Underneath because I was a huge fan, and I'm always implying that I want you to write more in that world, even though you've told me several times that you just don't feel like you're into it right now. What's it like to have a book that people really, really, really enjoyed, and they just want you to go back to that, but you don't feel like you're there?
I don't know. Maybe I'm just hoping that you will go out and build a whole legion of giant Super Queen Underneath fans, and then one of these days I will give them what they want.
Well, it just, and I always feel a little bit bad. I'm like, oh man, I keep bringing this up, but then it's like I can't restrain myself. I keep doing it over and over again because I'm such a big fan. But I in my head, I imagine it's like me asking my kids to go clean their room, and every time I ask, they're just not going to do it that much more. They're just like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Totally different from that. In that it's super flattering, and it does make me go, okay, at least I know that there are people who want to know what happened to those characters. I think part of what I'm waiting for is I think I need to grow as a writer. I think that the next set of what happens is harder and deeper and different. And I don't want to flub it. So
do it injustice.
Yeah. So yeah. it's still building in the back of my head, and it's still there. And, certainly, I know the major plot points. I know the things that I expect to happen. But I don't know. One day maybe. So when I wrote The Queen Underneath, I was working on something completely different. And I took a nap in the middle of the summer. I woke up all sweaty, and I sat down and wrote the first chapter. I mean, I woke up and it was there in my head, and I wrote it.
Yep.
So I'm just waiting for one of those hot summer naps to,
you
spur me along, I guess.
Space.
I mean, I have the next scene in the book that I've, stalled on in my head. I just have to get there. Right, yeah. Katie, I should just write it, right? And then we just write it.
I'm right there with you. I completely understand, because I have been dragging my feet on Asset 5 for how long? How long's it been since I released the fourth one?
Right, but
like 6 months.
I took you over. I took you over for 6 months.
That was an excuse. That was like my reason for, I can't write this now. I have something else to do.
We wrote a trilogy in 6 months.
See, that's insane. That's insane.
Stacey, to me, this is like when super thin people complain about needing to lose weight. It's like, I write a book like every 2 years, guys. Come on now.
Yeah, that's definitely where I'm at now. It's about every.
It's the same. You have to get yourself in the right headspace. You have to know what's going to happen next, and you have to be able to do the series justice, because we've all read books where it's a series author and they're a good author, but there's that one book in there where you knew they phoned it in because they were under deadline and they couldn't give it the attention it really needed.
Right,
Or
exactly.
Even worse, when the first book blows you away and then the next is a total shit fest, and you're like, now it's ruined.
Right, exactly. I don't want to do that.
Exactly. This one I have to a certain part, and then I'm like, do I end all the series? Because this is all the characters.
That's heartbreaking.
I know it is. Or do I just,
you put them in a room together and put a bomb in the closet? That's how Stephen King rolls. Take them all out.
This is like, okay, where can I? after this, I don't think I can go any further with the characters. So, do I do Jane fashion, which is our George R. R. Martin fashion? Or do I, so this is where I'm stuck. I have the next scene, but then I'm like, okay, where do I go?
Yeah.
So this is where I'm stuck a little bit, because I mean, there's one of 3 paths I can take, and they all look really fun and deliciously horrible.
Hi, Joshua.
So it's like,
Good evening.
hello.
And I feel like that's part of the downside of being a pantser, is you don't know what happens next. So you have to wait until it,
Until it gels, yeah.
shower
Oh, yeah.
epiphany, or you wake up in the middle of the night and you know what's going to happen or whatever. But it's, rarely does it happen where okay, I'm going to write this thing and then I know what happens next, and I know what happens next.
Usually I'm just
Never.
writing it and the characters take
Oh,
it.
yeah.
But
You know,
even
we've-
what
I
happens
didn't go with them, but this time I'm like, okay, there's one of 3 paths I can take, or one of multiple paths I can take. One leads to, a definitive end. One leads, it to heartbreak, and one leads, to this other darkness, and it's like, oh no,
They're all bad.
exactly.
When I wrote my first book, The Cold Room, it was supposed to be it was just supposed to be a standalone book. That was it. And it wasn't until, 5 or 6 years later that, God, I don't know who was it. Maybe it was the publisher told me I needed to write it as a trilogy. And I'm like, guys, this is like a single story. I mean, so the second and third book, I'm completely pulling out of my ass here.
Yeah.
I think they turned out well, but it's like, well, I didn't plan any of this. In my current work in progress, I had an outline, but it was just a series of events that I knew had to take place during the story at some point. So I'm just going through and I'm writing those scenes, but the story part of it, the overarching story still has to be written and still has to tie it all together. So sometimes even when you are making an outline of sorts, you're still kind of winging it as you go.
That's the big problem. If you can see where the story needs to go, but you can't see the path of how to get there,
That's
you're
frustrating.
still just as stuck.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I usually know where the story starts, 1 or 2 major plot points in the middle, and where the story ends. And that's usually it for what I know when I go in. And
That's like me. I do to-do lists for my characters, milk, eggs, cheese, kill the dragon, go home. And all the rest of the connective tissue there isn't available, but I know the points where I need to hit.
right.
Yeah. And Katie in my series, the characters are going to have a cameo.
That's awesome.
Ooh, that's pretty exciting. Wait,
I love
which?
that. I love how she
Thanks for giving it the Lions. Put it that way.
So, how do you guys feel about reading series? Because Katie and Jane both write long series. I don't intend to write series, but I'm being forced to. And Stacey, so far you've written a standalone book, and really as much crap as I've given you, The Queen Underneath is a standalone. It ends perfectly to be either a standalone or to have a follow-up. But when you're reading, do you guys like to read series, or do you like something that begins and ends within 400 pages?
I
That one.
I like both. I mean, there are series that you can dive into, and even after 1,500 or 2,000 pages or however much, you want more. I mean, you want to know where. Okay, so what happened after
Like
the
Twilight, right? Twilight was your favorite.
Totally.
That's
But
Jason's favorite.
I'm thinking of basically anything that N.K. Jemisin has ever written. Like, I would live in those worlds. I mean, if she wanted to just continue those series for 100 years, I would continue to buy them and read them.
Who was it again? Did you say again?
N.K. Jemisin.
Oh, okay. I don't know
She
her.
wrote the 5th season, that series, and then she also her Inheritance trilogy. You would love, trust me, you would love it.
Okay. Okay.
So, you know, some series I absolutely would want to, live in forever, and some standalone books are perfect, where they end. I think it just comes down to storytelling and where it stops. Did any of you watch Watchmen on HBO?
Not yet.
Mm-mm.
It is perfect in the fact that it ends and it leaves you enough of a little bit of hanging so you don't know exactly everything that's going to happen. But at the same time, I didn't want any more. I wanted it exactly where it was. And that's what I feel like a perfect standalone book can do. Like, there's
Okay.
more there, and there's more story and there's more life to the characters, but it doesn't need to go on. It's perfect the way it ends.
Okay. No, I get that. I've read a lot of series, but I really prefer standalones because I do get that beginning, middle, and end, and then I don't have to worry about I have to buy 6 more books and spend 3 more years before I get my conclusion. I can just finish it. But I really like it when it's satisfying and I know my characters have a path that they're going on. When I read Starless by Jacqueline Carey a year or two ago, whenever it came out, and she's known for writing these huge long series that are 1,000 pages per book, and I was worried that's where it was going, but it was perfect. It started, it finished, and I felt so satisfied at the end of it. I was like, now that was a freaking good read. I just feel good about this book, and I love when you find those. But yeah, obviously the exception is Twilight, which is everyone's favorite. And once you start those books, you just can't stop. You've got to keep. Don't we want Stephanie Meyer to write like 6 more of those, right? Isn't that
Well,
right,
if
Katie?
we give her time, she definitely will.
She will. She will.
She'll just turn them
No.
around and be from, I don't know, Alice's point of view or something.
we a lot of people hate on Twilight, but you know what? It entertained a lot of people, and that's
Well,
all we're doing.
It got my daughter reading.
Hell
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And she left her window open thinking Edward would come.
No, wait, that's the wrong lesson. We're trying to
But
teach here.
we go into a room and go, what's that?
Yeah, my daughter had Edward Cullen poster on her ceiling, so so she could pretend that he was in there all the time. But she was very young. She was in 4th grade, I think, when they started becoming popular, and she was reading, much higher than her reading, or her grade level for reading. So she wanted to read them, and I was pregnant for my youngest, and I said, well, I'll read them first and make sure they're okay for, she was what, like 9. And so I devoured them in like 3 days because I was hugely pregnant and I couldn't do anything else. So I read these books.
And they're super fast reading.
And they're super fast reads, and they are entertaining. They're also terrible, but they are entertaining.
Yeah.
And
I was so upset at the last book because the way that I was so let down. I was expecting all this pulled up and then.
Yeah,
but that's why you got to watch. The movie ends the way the books should have ended. I mean, I feel like the books were so, but I was the same way. My wife got the books from a friend. She burned through them and she was like, yeah, you got to read these. And I burned through them too. And not really my taste, but I'll tell you what, I kept freaking reading the stupid things.
Exactly.
And then I got done and I was like, damn it, they're over.
I'm like, no, I was like, what the?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And they were entertaining, and they were not, they weren't deep or heavy or anything like that, but you could just sit down and read a whole book. I hadn't done that since I was like, a teenager. And
I
just
mean,
I did that with
I read
Reed
that,
and
and then I read the Divergent series. Have you read
Mhm.
that?
Yep.
And I'm like,
Yep.
that's the case where the movies were awful in comparison to the books. Twilight's, it was the opposite. The movies gave them a little bit more life than some of the things in the book, at least the last one did.
Yeah. Yeah.
well, and
So
my
it's like, that was just like such a heartbreaking but brave thing of Veronica Roth to do at the end of that.
I think adaptations of series do they bring out the best of the book instead of just being a bad adaptation. They show the good things in the book and cut out the fat, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff that we really didn't need to go over, the pages and pages of just unnecessary details, and they trim it down into something that's beautiful, something that is definitely stays in line with the books or the source material, but continues the story and gives that beautiful visual, because that draws people back to the books.
Yeah, Julia doesn't like the end of Divergent.
I never read the last. I didn't finish it. I didn't finish the series or the movie, so I don't know how the end is. But yeah, she says it's stuck.
The book,
ending in the book is not satisfying in the slightest.
but it's the only way it could have gone. Seriously, the way it was led up to and all of that, it was so in character for her.
But nope, it's not a satisfying end for the reader.
Right. Yes, it's
it's not satisfying for the reader.
Where we argue.
Don't do that. Cardinal rule. Sorry, I got touchy with that one, and my daughter was like so involved in those books too. I was like, "Don't read the last one. Don't read the last one." She's like, "Why, Mom?" I'm like, "Don't read the last one."
You'll cry for like 2 days.
Yeah.
She read like a synopsis of the last one. She's like, "Yeah, no, not reading that."
So the terrible thing about series like that, when your kids are reading them as they grow up, is that, I mean, obviously, as an author, it takes a certain period of time for them to come out. And so my daughter outgrew several of those series because she had passed by that, sort of obsession with, I was obsessed with City of Bones and like
I was going to ask if you read those. Cassandra Clare, is that her?
Yeah. She got me into them. She was like, "You've got to read this. You're really gonna like this." And I did, and I loved it, and we devoured them together. And then there was like a break, between the books coming out, and by the time the last one came out, my daughter was like, "I don't care about that anymore." And I was so sad because I was like, "No, you need to care about it so I can care about it."
That's the thing about being an adult, I think, is it sticks with us more. With them, it's just kind of a passing thing.
Yeah.
There's books that to me, like Me and the World, still on my bookshelf. Those are the only ones I've kept around. It's like, no, it's just paper, but for some reason it connected with me and I can't let it go.
Well, The Stand was like that for me. And that has very, very devastating points in it. Even though the end tries to go up after that ending.
Yeah. Well, and I like I'm so Katie. I can't. I bring up Victoria Schwab like every freaking week because she is just a fucking incredible author. Oh my god! But anyhow, so when I read Vicious, it was like that for me. It was a standalone. I was perfectly happy with it. Of course, I wanted more, like everyone who read the book did, because it was so good. And then she came out with Vengeful, and Vengeful was just phenomenal as well. But I think that what touched me so much about those books is that there were these very extremely flawed people, very mentally unhealthy people doing bad things, but there was still kind of this hope for redemption for them in the end. And that's why it stuck with me. It's because I feel like I'm this really flawed person. And like, I'd like to think there's hope for redemption for me too, And so I think that for each one of us, we connect to these books in a different way. And I'm not really sure what the point was that I was going for here.
You just wanted to sneak in a V. Schwab reference.
But I just wanted to talk to Victoria. I'm not gonna lie. I actually talked to her publicist yesterday, because when Jacqueline said that she wasn't going to be able to come on to the show tonight, I reached out to Kirsten Dwyer and I said, hey, you know, this last minute, is there any way Victoria would want to come on and hang out with Stacey? And she said, oh, you know, we'd love to, but she's got 2 other events and she's in France right now, so the time zones would not work. But yeah, I just love her. She's kind of my author crush. You know, if I could write like her, I would be just the happiest person out there because she's amazing.
I just want you to know that I'm glad that you waited till now to tell me that information.
Oh,
I probably
really?
would have like passed out. It was bad enough when you said you were reaching out to Jacqueline, and I was like, I've met her before, and I still can't.
Wouldn't that have been an amazing surprise if all of a sudden you guys came on and fucking Victoria Schwab was on with their little cat ears? You would have shit yourself.
I would have, absolutely. I would have just sat here the whole time going,
She's a really fun person to listen to, though. I sat on a
Yeah, she's awesome.
Phoenix, and her talk about mythology, she was writing the books, was just amazing.
yeah, she's brilliant and funny and yeah, super crush for sure.
It would be so fun to get on the show. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, yeah. She's so brilliant, and she's just such a great public speaker. That's the fun part.
As you were talking about Vicious, I was wondering if you, Jason, or if any of you have read Kirsten White's When I Darken series.
No.
So it's a gender bent Vlad the Impaler.
Be still.
I know, I told you. As you're talking, I'm like, Jason needs to know about this.
You need to send me a message after this show.
I will. You need to read it. And they're big, hefty, like 500-600 books. There's 3 of them, and they're just phenomenal.
That's
Phenomenal.
like 50 days for me. Maybe.
Yeah, I can't read that fast.
2 days.
Okay, look, so I bought this series actually from TV. I watched the TV show, fell in love, so I had to buy the Discovery All Souls trilogy.
Okay.
A week in, and here's my progress. Okay, a week in, that's as much progress as I've made, and I've been devouring them as much as I can, as much as time permits. So yeah, I can't read fast.
No, I can't either. I am a 500-600 page book. I mean, that's a good couple months for me, and that's okay, because especially during the summertime, it's like, all right, I crawl into the hammock, when I've got a couple hours, and you just read till you fall asleep, and it's good. It's all good. Yeah.
Normally, I'm 500 or 600 pages a week, but not 2020.
Wow. Well, we have actually my publisher, my editor, Rebecca, is question: is there a book or series that hasn't stood the test of time for you? Ooh, we'll get to that in a second. Go, Indy, now. Our friend Rebecca Jonesy reads so quickly that at one point I sent her a manuscript just to check out, like 10 minutes before I was supposed to be on a show with her. And as we're getting on the show, she's saying, all right, well, I'm just finishing up your book now. And I'm like, wait a second here. Wait, how is this even possible? So, I mean, I don't know. Some people have got that ability. But so Joe's question, did we lose Joe's question? Can we put that back up there? I can't find it. There we go. Is there a book or series that hasn't stood the test of time for you? I'm going to let you guys take this one.
I haven't reread stuff that I read when I was young, but so I don't have the answer for that.
The last
Stacey,
time I tried to read any of the Anne Rice novels, that was my first love, was Anne Rice.
Okay.
I don't have the same love for it reading it now as I did back then, so I won't continue rereading them because I don't want to tarnish the memories that I have of loving those series.
So I think for me, my first impulse was to say The Wheel of Time, which I love in spite of itself. I think it became bloated and kind of
It was problematic at the end.
too much. Yes. And I think you could probably cut 50% of it and have a really tight, well-written, amazing series. But what I loved about it then and what I still love about it now is it taught me the virtues of giant casts of characters and really like strong world building with, just a ton of thought put into why does this happen, what caused it to be the tradition 1,000 years or 5,000 years ago or whatever. Jordan had all of that world building in that series, and but I think if I were to read it now, I think I probably would be really, really disappointed. And I'm hoping that the TV series fixes some of what I would be disappointed about, but we'll see.
The first big series I ever got into, well, aside from the Bunnicula books, because those were great.
The Celery Stalks at Midnight.
Yes, that was the first one I read, I think. But I read the Xanth series when I was in later, like 7th, 8th, 9th grade, somewhere in there. Piers Anthony, and there's a ton of them. I know there's a dozen or so, and I really, really enjoyed them. It's what got me interested in fantasy, and I just love them. But now, as I look back, and I haven't tried to reread them, I know that a lot of the writing was problematic. A lot of the way he portrayed female characters was very, very problematic. And so I won't go back and reread them because, like someone just said, I don't really want to tarnish that memory. It was great. It got me really involved with reading when it was the right time for me to be reading. I don't want to go back and screw it all up now when I know there was some major issues.
I mean, I still have my grandfather's copies of the Tarzan series by Edgar Rice Burroughs. I have all of them. And I wonder how I would read it now, from the childhood times at the beach, reading that entire series. I mean, I don't know. I have like 30 books, I think they are, 30 little thin ones. And, I used to read those over and over again during a week. And yes, I'd read them more than once during the week. Because I think that's all he had up there. But I wonder how I used to devour them every summer.
Well,
I
think now as authors who've written multiple books, I think we tend to read differently too. We read with a more critical eye, even though we don't intend to.
Yeah,
so why is this detail in here? I wouldn't have put that in there. Why were we wasting our time on this? Get to the plot, and you're not trying to disparage the work at all, but it's just that natural, this is what we've trained ourselves is what good writing is. So we apply it to anything we read, and that kind of diminishes our enjoyment a little bit.
I think
I would agree with that.
And that's the tough thing about being sent books from our friends is sometimes you read them, you're like, oh man, all you can see are mistakes, and that's why it's so fun when you get sent a book and you're like, oh wow, that's a really freaking good book. It really stands out because it's hard. I mean, being an author, writing stuff, I mean, it's hard work. It is. I mean, if
it pulls you through without really realizing you're reading.
Yeah.
And our bar is getting higher and higher and higher, and it is tough to read for pleasure.
It is. But you know what are so good summer reading books? For a while there, I was, oh my God, this must have been 20 years ago, maybe 15. I started reading Iris Johansen, and she writes just thrillers, and it's, mostly, strong female protagonists, very, very predictable plot lines once you've read a few of them, but they're just so damn enjoyable. You don't have to think about them a whole lot. You could just, laze around and burn through a book in a few days and grab the next one. It's just pure entertainment without any work involved. But yeah, that was a good summer reading.
Yes. I used to read her stuff.
Yeah, it's fun stuff. Well, she sold a lot of books, so she's doing it right,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, Mike, you're right. It's tough to get into classics, especially if you're not an English lit person.
Right.
That's real tough, especially if you're used to modern genre fiction. You can't really go from Lee Child to Edgar Allan Poe without experiencing a little bit of a culture shock.
There's
Mhm.
a shift,
And I
though,
could go on a.
where we sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
I was just quick point, because I've been doing a lot of manuscript critiques as part of my Rising Sign book business, and a lot of what we're used to as far as older writing, where they actually gave you a good introduction and really got you settled into the character before they threw something at you. A lot of modern writing doesn't have that anymore, because people don't have the attention span for that slow introduction to the character's normal life. They want to jump right in to where the action starts, and it sacrifices some of that getting to know the character a little bit.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Stacey?
I was just going to say that I think books like Frankenstein and Dracula and all of those, they became quote unquote classics really quickly, right? They became the flagships of their genre, and they have been so for 150 years. And I think our problem is that we need to update our class. I would say that the classics that we read in high school, that our parents read in high school, are probably not the classics that modern day teenagers should be reading. And that's why my teenagers are frothing at the mouth over having to read some really seriously boring stuff.
I'll second that. Yeah.
I really feel like there needs to be some updated I mean, even I was saying earlier, The Secret Garden, and how much I loved that book as a child. And I busted it out a couple of years ago to read out loud to my kids. And even I was bored. And I was like, I love this book. But it's kind of boring by today's standards. I just think we can do better, because there's such a plethora of options that teach the same lessons and that, are more in tune with our modern lifestyle.
I agree completely. I think that, a few years back, Stephen King made a little bit of a fuss at some kind of award show because he said that people weren't recognizing modern classics, classic authors, incredible literary authors of the modern age. And he was saying that we should be doing that. And I agree. We should. It should be it should be like cars, the classics are from, how many years ago, and then you get to vintage, or I don't know anything about cars.
Well, they've done a good job of making the music that we listened to in high school classic rock. So I think we can probably do the same with books.
Nine Inch Nails will never be classic rock, man.
You're listening to an old station and you realize that's your high school music. There's
right.
You're like,
how did
great
Green Day
station,
get
and
on
then they
oldies?
come on and they're like rocking the oldies.
And I am older than all of you. So
That's true.
I'm like the 70s. I'm real rock.
Oh no.
Did she just hipster us? Did she just I'm the real
she
rock?
Did.
Yep.
She totally hipstered us.
Okay, boomer.
Right. Okay, boomer.
Come on.
One of my kids called me a boomer the other day. I was like, the fuck are you thinking, man?
We are the silent middle generation.
That's right. We're the good ones. All right. Well, we are at the end of our time tonight, which means the lovely and talented Katie Salidas is going to professionally roll us out of the show.
I love how he just keeps throwing me under the bus.
I know. At least you have the write-up.
We have an intro. We don't have an exit. Our exit is see you later.
Just add goodbye to the end of it.
That may actually change, though. Spoiler alert, in the next few weeks, we may actually have a new exit to start teasing people with, but that's not going to happen for another couple of weeks. So you'll have to stay tuned to see what those develop to become. Oh, what
have
is
you guys met Voodoo Bunny?
Oh my God!
I saw Voodoo Bunny on Facebook. He's fantastic.
Yeah,
Like that.
my little collection of stuffed animals that my wife makes me.
I was gonna say, is that Heather?
Yes,
Yeah.
of
She
course.
is awesome. She is so awesome.
Well, everybody who's been out there watching, listening, commenting, thank you so very much. Oh, Joshua says that we're supposed to plug our stuff. Joshua, you are such a great reminder of things.
Thank you.
Guys, Go out there, search for Stacey Filak and buy The Queen Underneath. It's freaking awesome. I am not shitting you. It is amazing. Just go buy it. Yes.
I'm
it.
Stacey Filak, and I approve that message.
Oh,
There you go.
nice.
Yeah. And then Katie Salidas there has like 800 books. I'd recommend starting with the Chronicles of the Uprising.
Mhm.
That's for Katie there.
Solid.
Jane has more like 10,000 books. Jane, I don't know. What would you start with when yours? There's a lot of different directions you could go with yours.
I know. Well, my latest book that came out in March was Spindle, which is a Sleeping Beauty retelling. So this is that's why I was like, wow. And then before that, the books that Katie and I wrote, Running from the Devil series. A lot of people like those. So
Yeah, they've been getting some pretty good reception. I'm
Yeah.
happy with that.
yeah, we're selling pretty good.
Anything, just look us all up by name, anything from our catalogs.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Jason too, because oh my God, Pathosis.
It's coming. It's coming in June. Yeah. And don't look up the Unstoppable J-Saurus. I can't vouch for anything that might come up. I have no idea. But if you look for Jason Lavelle, you'll find my books.
I can't wait until Pathosis is re-released, Jason, because that's
Oh.
just, it's such a fun book, and it's
Me
going to give everyone
too.
chills. And
Me too. I
It's-
can't wait. And it's perfect timing, releasing a book about a pandemic in the middle of a pandemic.
yep.
Right.
Like,
And when I said I
yeah.
would read it, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll read it. I started it. I was like, nope.
I had to stop. I was beta reading and putting notes in. I kept having to stop because my skin was crawling.
I got through like a chapter, and I was like, no, that was really nice.
The man knows. He has got some really not only creepy details, but really good details about the bugs in there. So you really got to pay attention.
I do like
Yeah.
that. I do.
Yeah, that's a daytime book for sure.
All right, everybody. Good night. Thank you for joining us. It's been wonderful. And